At this time, we're going to bring up Mr. Steve Cohen, who represents the great state of Tennessee, to bring his remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence. When I was a freshman in 2007, I was the only member of the House who chose Judiciary as their first committee choice, at least the only Democrat. That gave me the opportunity to be on John Conyers' committee, him being my chairman for 10-plus years. And that was a blessing to me. He taught me much. I would consider him my mentor. He taught me about life. He taught me about judiciary issues in the Congress. But he taught me about life. John Conyers was a spirit. I sometimes thought of him kind of as like a hippie, because he had these ethereal thoughts about the way people ought to be and about caring about people and about justice and about civil rights that was unlike thoughts you'd hear from most people. But he was ahead of the hippies. He was ahead of Bernie Sanders. He was ahead of so many people. And we talk here today, so many people, about him being, which is all true, longest-serving African-American member of Congress. But it was more than that. He was a voice for truth on this floor before people realized the truth was the truth. He was a voice for truth when people just thought it was an African-American guy talking about African-American issues. But it wasn't African-American issues, it was human issues. It was the essence of America, about justice and freedom and opportunity and right. And he espoused it at an early time when a lot of people didn't get it. People get it now, and they realize Dr. King got a holiday. Dr. King was great, but people hated Dr. King for years. People didn't know about Rosa Parks, per se. He gave her a job, and he put her on a pedestal, which she deserved to be. I'll tell you a story about John Conyers. When I was a freshman, and I have an African-American district, and some people weren't so crazy about me being up here, John Conyers took me under his wing from day one. And I had a resolution to apologize for slavery and Jim Crow. I had that resolution because I had suggested it to Bill Clinton in 1997 and wrote him a letter when I was a state senator and suggested he should sponsor such a thing and have a dialogue about race in America. I got a response from Bill Clinton, but it was gibberish, and he didn't act upon it. But when I got elected to Congress and I was going through my letters as a state senator in my office, I came across that letter. And I said to myself, I am a congressman now, and I can do something about it. I don't have to write Bill Clinton and get a meaningless response. So I introduced that resolution, heartfelt and appropriate. Some people didn't want it to come to the floor. Some didn't want a white person to sponsor it. Some thought I was using it for politics to get reelected. The fact is, my political consultant told me not to do it. He said, you've got this race won. Don't do it. It can only hurt you. I said, you don't get it. I'm doing this because it matters to me to make it happen, and it's mattered to me since 1997 when I was a state senator. So one day, I had my cell phone low on power. And I had a staffer bring from Longworth, where my office was, a charger. And I charged it up in the Judiciary Committee. I went back to Longworth. I couldn't find my cell phone. I'd forgotten where I'd left it. And I realized I left it charged in the Judiciary Committee. So I went over there at the end of the day. It's the only time that ever happened to me. It was about a week or 10 days before my election in August, just to put it in the perspective of it. And I went there, and John Conyers was having a meeting with his staff on what to do the next week. And we were in the midst of interviewing people on the Bush team, Alberto Gonzales and some lady from Liberty University who'd done some stuff that was questionable, and we were taking on the Bush Justice Department, which had done some egregious things. And I was a freshman and pretty much in awe of John Conyers. And so I was in the back room, and he was in his office, and he said, Steve, come on in. Well, I was 10 feet high. I was going into a meeting with John Conyers and what was going to go on that next week. And they were tossing around ideas about maybe bringing up an impeachment of George Bush and some other issues. And I decided to throw out kind of a Doug Flutie Hail Mary pass. And I said, how about if we have an apology for Jim Crow and slavery? And without a blink, John Conyers said, that's a great idea. Put it on for next week. That's how it got scheduled. We came here. John Conyers managed the time. It passed on a voice vote. I regretted that because I wanted to have everybody vote on it, but John Conyers said, and properly so, take your victory when you can get it. We had a man on the other side, a Republican, who brought up some insane babble about some Christians being thrown off a boat in the Mediterranean by some Moroccans or something. What this had to do with slavery and Jim Crow was beyond any of us. And I wanted to respond to it. And Mr. Conyers said, let him be. Let's just pass this and move on. And he was right. My proudest accomplishment as a freshman, and one of my proudest accomplishments in this Congress, was the passage of that resolution. It would not have happened but for John Conyers' sponsorship and support. So I thank him for being a mentor and teaching me so much and giving me that opportunity. He did love jazz. We talked about jazz all the time. He played jazz in his office. He had jazz musicians come up to any proceedings he had in Washington and had them perform. And I learned about different jazz people that I'd previously not known about. He came to Memphis to support me in my first term, was the first congressperson to come there. He was honored with a 4th of April Foundation Award, which goes to great, courageous leaders in civil rights on the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. He was given that award. And he came to Memphis also just to support me. And he was a proud Kappa coming in his red coat, and all the Kappas were there with him, and the Kappas loved him. And he was a Kappa, and they loved it. I thanked him for his service. I think about him almost every day up here. We used to sit here together on the floor. And he would ride the escalators when he'd leave Judiciary Committee, and sometimes I ride the escalators now and I think about John Conyers. It's not really the quickest way to go, but John Conyers did it and I do it. So thank you, John Conyers, for teaching me so much and for being a great leader, a man beyond his years in terms of his knowledge and his spirit, and ahead of his time with his ideas of civil rights and justice and fairness for all people. God bless you.
Thank you so much.